to the first session of our Workforce Development webinar series. We are so excited to have you here. The labor shortage continues to place a heavier and heavier burden on the economy as companies struggle to find the talent they need, and as more and more people opt out of work. Now is the time to invest in new and more strategic approaches to developing talent and helping people find their way in the labor market. My name is Jennifer Kolb, and I'm the Vice President of Business Development at Tallo. And joining me is Chelsea Williams, CEO and founder of College Code. As a Forbes honored startup, College Code works at the intersection of education, workforce development, and human capital to support students, early career professionals, and organizations in preparing for the future of work. Since inception, College Code has supported over 10,000 students, professionals, and leaders globally. Their work is rooted in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and creating pathways to meaningful work and economic outcomes for historically underrepresented populations. Our goal today is to engage, interact, and most importantly, learn from Chelsea. We've got an hour, and I have no doubt it'll fly by quickly. We encourage you to use the Q&A box so Chelsea can answer your questions live, as we've scheduled about 45 minutes of educational content and then about 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A with Chelsea at the end. So don't hold back, send over your questions. We want to make this a valuable and impactful conversation to help you with your own strategizing and planning. So let's welcome Chelsea to the conversation. Chelsea Williams is deeply passionate about a more equitable and inclusive workplace. As a workplace strategist, international speaker, and the founder and CEO of College Code, she supports national organizations in centering diversity, equity, and inclusion as a forefront rather than an afterthought. Chelsea is a highly sought advisor to global organizations on talent attraction, development, and retention, with a specialty in engaging early stage professionals and people managers. She has spoken at PR Council, Johnson & Johnson, Major League Soccer, and the Society of Human Resource Management. Prior to launching College Code, Chelsea spent 10 years on Wall Street managing and leading human capital across the United States, Europe, and Asia. Chelsea had obtained a BA in economics from Spelman College, and in 2021, Chelsea was honored as a Forbes Next 1000 entrepreneur for innovation and resilience in the face of global change. What an honor it is to have you here with us today, Chelsea. And I have to just add, on top of that impressive bio, you are certainly one of a kind, such an encouraging, authentic, energetic person. I feel lucky to have spent time learning from you already. So thank you for being here and teaching us today. I'm going to pass the mic over and let's just go ahead and dive right in.
Thank you so much, Jennifer and Abby, and to the Tallo community. I am so honored. This has truly been like one of those moments I've been waiting for all week. Honored to be here, excited to share some information with you, hopeful to inspire you and help you push towards progress. I know that there are so many things happening in the world, and we're getting into the final month of the year, literally today. And there's so many places that you could be and so many ways that you can spend your time. And I'm just honored that you would choose to spend a power hour with me learning about a topic that I believe is critical for the times. So get comfortable. Again, I want to encourage you to use the Q&A at any point of the presentation. And I'm going to be asking you some questions. We've got a few polls here to kind of get a sense of where you are, and we're going to hope that you will engage. So without further ado, let's get this party started, as I like to say. So today I'm going to be talking about winning steps to retain and develop diverse emerging talent. I want to say that I will primarily focus this conversation on the lens of race and ethnicity, although much of what I will discuss will consider any intersection of diversity that's necessary to think about emerging talent of today. I don't need to tell you much about myself. The introduction was enough. But I do want to let you know that I am passionate about reimagining work and career. My team is passionate about reconsidering how we work, where we work, when we work, the purpose of work, and making sure that our next generation feels empowered to do the same. So to get us started, I would love to ask Jennifer to launch our first poll. And it's asking you a question to get a sense of who's here. So please launch the poll, Jennifer.
There we go.
Awesome. And do you mind just reading out for us what we'd like for people to respond to?
Yes. So first poll, attendee pulse check. What best describes your sector? K-12 institution, college or university, nonprofit, government, corporation, startup, or entrepreneur?
Fantastic. We're going to give you about 20 seconds to respond, and then I will ask Jennifer to share the results.
See, we've got some answers coming in.
Okay. 10-second countdown. Don't get left behind. Respond.
We'll start a little jingle for these polls. Give some background music.
Yeah.
Okay, so the results are in. We have almost a split between college and university representatives and corporation representatives. So we've got 37% of our attendees representing a college or a university. We've got 26% representing a corporation, 21% representing economic government development, 11% representing a startup, and 5% representing a nonprofit.
Fantastic. Well, we have got a mixed bag here. And so again, really hopeful that everyone takes something away that is helpful for where they are. So fantastic. Well, first, I want to start by exploring our landscape. Where are we as we talk about diversity, as we talk about talent, as we talk about future of work? Well, I want to first set us on a foundation of understanding this concept of dimensions of diversity. And this really provides us an opportunity to understand that the conversation of diversity is broad. There's so many different elements of who we are, things we can see and things we can't see. And I know this group knows this well. And I want to just set us on an understanding that this particular conversation today will focus on primary forms of identity, i.e. race and ethnicity and age, because we're talking about early talent. And we will also be talking about error diversity, this whole generational conversation. Why? Because we now have 5 generations in the workplace. And so we are going to be connecting age and race to generations. When we talk about generations, why is this important? Preferences, ideals, experiences, events that shape the way that people see and navigate themselves, others, and the world. And ultimately that impacts the organizations and workplaces of today and of the future. So we're going to focus on that. What do I want you to remember? Love this graph by the Brookings Institution, which basically says younger generations are now the majority. And this is going to continue to be a reality, certainly when we're honing in on experiences in the workplace. And as we explore the percentage of millennials, Gen Z, and younger, which we'll talk about shortly, that are making up the society at large and certainly the organizations we work. What's the big call to action? By 2030, 30% of the workforce will be composed of Gen Z. Last I checked, that's a few years away, right? There was a time when our conversations were pretty focused on millennials, the millennial experience. Now certainly we need to expand the conversation to multi-generations at work, because we have got boomers in the workplace as well. And we certainly have Gen Z at work. And in a few years, we'll have Alpha generation, which precedes Gen Z at work. But for this conversation, as we talk about early talent of today, that's pretty much our Gen Zers. And in a few years, they're going to make up 30%, which is a significant population in our workforce. And so we want to understand how to engage them effectively. What I want to call our attention to and the focus of the lens of diversity on race and ethnicity is because generations have much in common, but the concept of racial representation is one of the things that is vastly different. If we look at another chart by the Brookings Institution, we see that race and ethnicity composition, particularly in the United States, is starting to expand as we talk about up and coming generations. Generation Alpha will be the first majority non-white generation in US history. What does this mean? It's more critical than ever for us to start to center, as Jennifer mentioned earlier in my bio, diversity and inclusion as a forethought rather than an afterthought because of the demographical shifts that are taking place across this country and certainly taking place across the world. What's the big point as we get into some action steps for you? Generational nuances provide relevant insights to the experiences that can support building a conscious talent strategy. So with this information, with this data, we don't just take the data and assume that it's going to make an impact on our programs, our policies, and our practices. We leverage the data to make sure that we're being intentional in reaching the populations that we're seeking to serve. And why I love the term reimagine so much is because we are being challenged to do things differently. Much of the whole conversation of the pandemic, and certainly heightened conversations on social justice and unrest, really points to the opportunity for us to reconsider and to use some of the experiences of this next generation as a fueling point for how we engage and how we develop them in the workforce and workplace of the future. So now I want to hear from you, another poll, our second poll of our time together. My question to you is, and Jennifer will launch the poll, does your organization have targeted initiatives to support emerging talent? Okay, and the answers are pretty easy here. Yes, no, or unsure. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to respond to this second poll.
And cue our little jingle, Chelsea.
Jingle, jingle, jingle. 10-second countdown. Jennifer, what are we seeing?
Let's see the results. So does your organization have targeted initiatives to support emerging talent? 53% said yes, 26% said no, and 21% unsure.
Okay, well, guess what? Everybody's in the right place. Because if you said yes, amazing. And I am hoping when it comes time that you share some best practices with the group and keep this engaging. For those of you who said no, again, you're in a great place. My goal is that you walk away with one action step you can take to get to this point of being able to create initiatives for emerging talent. And for those who said unsure, I think you'll have an aha moment by the end of this that either validates a yes or confirms a no, okay? And so this is great. And the point of this is just to show us that we've got a mixed bag of people in the house, and that we're gonna have some people who've been at this and can provide perspective, and some who this is new territory, and that is healthy. So let's get into the good stuff. What does it actually take to build the pipeline? What does it take? Because I would say, I think about my experience as a graduate of Spelman College, a historically Black women's college in Atlanta, Georgia, liberal arts college. When I went to Spelman, I studied economics. I chose economics because Spelman didn't have a business program, to be clear. And so I was like, what is economics? It sounds close to business. This is what I'm going to do. And I think about my experience graduating college over a decade ago and thinking about the students who are at Spelman today, and I've had a chance to connect with some of them. And I think that what was necessary to build the pipeline, or what corporations were seeking in graduates even a decade plus ago, looks different today. And so I want to make sure when we're thinking about our programs, our policies, and our practices to engage and empower the next generation, that we're moving forward with the times. So let's explore. What I think is important first is to understand the landscape. What are the facts? What are the experiences? What are the realities taking place today? And so I wanted to gather a few facts from some of our partner organizations that we work with that explores some really important themes that help us think about emerging talent. First, by the American Association of University Women, AAUW. Black and Hispanic Latinx students are overrepresented in lower earning majors. Did we know that? A lot of times majors, and we all know here that a major is not indicative of success in a career, but many times people's interests or understanding of career paths are shaped by what they study. So we need to understand from a racial lens that Black and Hispanic students are typically choosing majors that are lower earning compared to other high growth or fast growing industries or sectors like STEM. Black and Hispanic Latinx students are more likely to leave STEM majors than white students. A lot of times there's a lot of focus, as we know, on building the STEM pipeline, building the tech pipeline, and where does the bottleneck or the challenge exist? Many would say it starts in K-12, exploration and understanding. But I do want us to understand that data has showed us that students of color, namely Black and Hispanic Latinx, may start off choosing a STEM major, but are unable to matriculate and graduate with that degree for a number of different reasons. Do we know that? Do we understand that? Because if we understand this point, we can create programs, policies, and practices that help in the college success. Point 3, 22.2% of white students reported having help paying back loans, compared with 13% of Black students and 9.7% of Hispanic Latinx students. If we are not considering economic implications and the economic landscape that students have to navigate through in terms of going to college and graduating with college and then getting gainful employment, we're missing the opportunity to really narrow the gap. And so our understanding, these are just 3 examples of experience of students of color today, helps us be able to implement and evolve our programs so that they're actually helpful towards the barriers that currently exist. So I want to take a moment and I'd like to ask you to share in the chat what you believe today's Gen Z, i.e. early talent, are seeking in an employer. So we've got some college folks here, we've got some employers here, we've got some entrepreneurs and nonprofits here. In the interest of time, give me one trait that you believe that emerging talent are seeking in an employer. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Jennifer, you can cue the jingles if you'd like to, so people can think about it.
I love it.
To help us through the session. We have 30 seconds here. Let's go. What do you believe Gen Z are seeking? Oh, good. I can't necessarily see the chat, but I'm seeing the number, the little red number, go up and up and up. So this means that you all are responding, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, Chelsea, we're seeing a lot of different responses. Some say flexibility, pay, autonomy, connection, rewarding jobs, both personally and financially. Catherine has said, it seems that my students, Gen Z, they're focused on flexibility in a schedule and workplace.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a purpose and an organization, camaraderie, belonging, remote work, flexibility, and value, measured by productivity rather than time spent.
Powerful, all of them, all of the above, excellent responses, appreciate it. Now I want to take that question one step further, and that this is going to be really, really important for the group. Do you believe Gen Z, who are part of racial minority groups in this country, have different employer preferences and ideals compared to students at large? And here you could just put a yes or no or unsure. Do you think there are variations in employer preference based off of race and ethnicity? Please respond in the chat. Yes, no, or unsure.
We've got a poll queued up for that one too.
Oh,
Chelsea.
good. Okay, awesome.
Make it even easier. You can just click.
You can just click it.
And give everybody a couple of seconds. All right, and the results are in. So do you believe Gen Z racial minorities have different employer preferences and ideals? 62% said yes, 14% said no, 24% said unsure.
Okay, awesome. So let's see, let's talk about it. Let's dive in. Well, I absolutely love a report that Ripple Match, which is a really great platform for recruiting and for employers. They did some research a few years ago on what Gen Z want out of employers. And I love that they compared what Gen Z want across the national average or their standard average and what underrepresented minorities want in an employer. And so I thought this would be helpful to talk over with the group. So what were some of the key categories they included? Professional development, upward mobility, community, job stability, work-life balance, social impact, compensation, company prestige. Much of what you all shared in the chat. But I want to hone in from this list on where underrepresented minorities had a greater interest in these characteristics being a part of the experience. 4 key places here. 1, job stability. Again, this particular poll was 2018, 2019. So important for us to understand this was pre-pandemic, but still helpful for us to understand. Job stability, getting jobs where I know that I'm going to be able to have consistent pay, consistent opportunity for time. Compensation. Again, this doesn't surprise me because if I look at that last statistic we discussed around student loans as one example and who's getting support being able to pay it back, well, compensation is important if you have obligations, and student loans are just one example of obligations, right? So we understand and we know, we should know that the pay parity becomes really important for underrepresented minority early talent. Point 2, upward mobility. Are there pathways for me to be able to get to the next level? We've done quite a lot of work at College Code, focus groups and interviews with emerging talent broadly, but we've zoned in on Black and Hispanic students, and they've told us, you know, it becomes important when I'm looking for an employer or a job to go to the website, to look at their social media, to understand who's in leadership, to understand the opportunities for me to grow and develop, because if that's not there, it's hard for me to believe that I can succeed and excel. Finally, and this was in the chat, social impact. This next generation, and this shouldn't be a surprise to us, care about impact, environmental sustainability, racial justice, gender justice, and the like. And so the more that we can connect career with purpose and values, and we can demonstrate that to my employers who are in the house, the better. Okay, so this is just to kind of provide us an opportunity to understand there are preferences that transcend generations, but if we're really trying to be conscious, we do need to consider the experiences of underrepresented populations that could be slightly more important as we talk through decision-making and career. According to the Deloitte Global 2021 Millennial and Gen Z survey, nearly half, about 49% of respondents said they have made choices on their career and potential employers that they'd like to work for based on organizational values and ethics. Again, this is one of those places that we are often hearing from students. I want to pursue conscious careers. I want to be a part of an organization that truly believes in a better environment, that truly believes in racial justice. And so again, we want to make sure if we are on the side of supporting student success and experience, that we're empowering them to explore their values and use their values as a lever in deciding on career pathways and certainly on employers. And if we're employers in the house, we want to really tap into making sure our employer brand is considering social impact as an opportunity to brand with this generation. Point that I want us to remember. Again, this particular conversation was honing in on race and ethnicity as one form and one lens of a diversity. We need to understand, particularly with this generation, that intersectionality. What is intersectionality? The overlapping parts of our identity that oftentimes can cause discrimination or bias, coined by Kimberly Crenshaw. And so many people think of intersectionality as only gender and race as 2 examples, but I want to remind this group that there are other forms of identity that we need to consider when we're talking about this next generation. Certainly sexual orientation, immigration status, disabilities, and I'm saying this broadly, physical and even mental health, parent and caregiving. We don't talk about that often. And we definitely have found in our community, we've been surprised at the amount of students who said, particularly over the pandemic, the unique challenges they have as single parents or the caregiving responsibilities that they have at home. And then certainly socioeconomic is always important when we're talking about access and opportunity. What's important for us to know? A focus on intersectionality breaks down the notion that challenges we face are equally distributed. In fact, intersecting identities often shape webs of opportunity or lack thereof. So again, we need to understand the generational conversation, and the early talent conversation is evolving and changing. But if we're not thinking about how forms of identity are going to impact the experience or have impacted the experience of the next generation, we're missing the opportunity to be intentional. So let's move along to an important piece here. And it's, how can we reimagine early talent development? We've got about 15 minutes or so before I get to go to your questions, so keep them coming in. In this particular section, I'm going to be talking about the opportunity for career development to evolve, considering some of the important elements of identity, important future of work conversations that have emerged over the last few years. We do some work with Chicago public schools and with some charter schools in Chicago. And I remember when we were kicking off our partnership a few months ago, well, really in the late summer, we were at a particular school. This particular school has about a 95% student of color population on the South Side. And we were talking to students about careers, and we were trying to understand what careers are you interested in? What parts of your experience have impacted the career pathways you believe you can navigate through? And I remember hearing something powerful that has stuck with me. If I can't see it, it's hard to believe that I can be it. This is what a student, Chris, said in one of the classrooms that we were working with. And I think that this is really important when we're talking about student experience and we're talking about empowering students from racial backgrounds to understand what the access points are, or where there may have been a lack of opportunity, in being able to support career pathways. And so what are the essential pillars that we believe are important for empowering the next generation in 2021 plus? Love this graphic by Entangled Group, which is now Guild Education. I really believe this is a powerful framework that we certainly use when we're talking about our curriculum and our consulting with our partners. We believe that career development for early talent should be threefold. What does this mean? We are considering the concept of social capital. Who do you know? And how are we making sure that we are empowering early talent to think about social capital beyond mentors? Because there's a lot of programs in this country that focus on mentorship, and they're doing a great job, and we need that. But social capital, who you know, is more than a conversation on just mentors. And so we want to be able to allow young people to understand the career coaching relationships they have, the peer relationships they have, the specialist relationships they have, people who are in the sector or role that they aspire to be in. All of this is healthy and important as they think about really connections and networks that are going to help them excel and succeed. What you know how to do. Point two, skills. Most of the workforce development and career conversation has focused on skills, whether technical skills or interpersonal skills, but truly more focused on technical skills. Hence, a lot of the different coding programs, data programs, that digital marketing programs that are emerging across the country. One example of an organization that I absolutely adore is Co-op, that basically has this industry sector approach to coaching first generation graduates or underemployed graduates across the country, and making sure that they're skilling up. But I want us to understand, as we think through the pandemic and we think through a lot of the social justice issues in the country, if we're not thinking about how to build intrapersonal, I don't say soft skills, interpersonal capacity in this next generation, and we don't have a pillar that is focused on leadership and character and inclusion and all the things that matter paired with the technical skills, we're missing it, because we're going to have a leadership crisis if we don't consider building this into our curriculum. So this becomes essential. And then finally, point three, and I believe the game changer for underrepresented minorities in particular, is this concept of occupational identity. What is occupational identity? What you believe you can be. Back to my original point. If I can't see it, it's hard to believe that I can be it. And so how are we making sure, when we're talking about supporting the next generation, that we consider how to build confidence? The formal term is occupational identity, the belief and the access to this next generation so that they're able to pursue careers, even if they haven't seen anyone who has done it before. This is the part that requires us to connect with personal story and allows us to be able to provide as much access as we can to new careers, emerging careers, etc. So I'd like to pose a poll to you all. And I'm curious, from the pillars of social capital, skills, and confidence building, which foundation pillar do you believe is most critical for early career professionals today? Jennifer, can you launch the poll?
We are live.
Oh, I see you are great. Thank you.
I love these polls. It's such a fun way to get everybody talking.
Yeah. So we'll give them about 20 seconds to respond. Ten seconds.
I'm glad you were timing. All right, and the results are in. So which foundational pillar do you believe is most critical for early career professionals today? 15% said skills, 40% said social capital, and 45% said occupational identity.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it, Jennifer. First of all, while there's not a clear right answer yet, and I see a place and space for all of them. Let me say that. I am so happy 45% of you said occupational identity, because if I don't believe it, if I don't have the confidence to pursue it, I can't even get to the point where I'm forming relationships or building the actual skill capacity. So Chelsea's view, and it's interesting because it would be a toss-up for me between occupational identity or confidence and social capital. But I even tend to find when it comes to social capital, if a student doesn't truly believe they can do it, they're not maximizing the relationships, or they are weary to reach out. They're weary to have the coffee chat because they are not feeling as though they have something to bring to the table, or it's hard for them to prepare for the conversation. And so I would say, one thing I want us to consider when we're talking about career development in 2021 plus is that socio-emotional needs must be met. If we're talking about career development, even if we're talking about college success for those who choose that pathway, if we're not considering the emotional experiences of young people, the social experience of young people, we're missing the opportunity to get down to the core of who they are and to understand the roadblocks that maybe society has placed on them, or maybe what family members have told them about what is possible based off of their zip code or based off of their nationality. And so I would say one powerful thing that we have done in the programs we've launched across the country is to add a mental health and wellness component at the offset of every program that we do. So before we get into skills of the future, before we get into building inclusive leadership, before we get into career coaching, we start with the conversation on self. Who am I? What has shaped the way that I see and navigate the world? What are the values that matter deeply to me? And we use that plus a conversation on mental health and how students can start to understand that and build in wellness and anti-burnout strategies. We talk about that first before we get into the social capital and connections they need to make, and certainly before we get them paired up with our technology partners, coding partners, etc. This is critical in us being able to help build students of the future. Connected to that conversation is something that we have been exploring a lot, and it is around what I believe is the skill of the decade, adaptability. And whether or not we want to lean into this skill or not, geez, the past few years have certainly pushed us to this, okay? And so I would ask you, when you think about career development, whether you are an employer, whether you are an education partner, how are you helping and supporting students in building the skill of adaptability? Employers, I know for certain we want to hire people who are able to be adaptable and who understand that change is now the term of life. If you can't get with it, my goodness, there's going to be some challenges that exist. Are we measuring and assessing for the skill of adaptability in our interview processes through our internships? How are we including that in our performance reviews and assessment for leadership opportunities? In the classroom or on campuses, how are we considering helping students build this skill? If that's not something that we're proactively doing, and also pointing out to them when they're demonstrating the skill of adaptability and really helping them feel empowered in the space, we're missing an opportunity. And so I would want us to understand that this is an important skill forward. But now I want to take a moment, and I know that we have got some people who shared a little bit earlier that you have targeted initiatives to support emerging talent. So I want to give you some time to share. Here's my question for you, and this is something that I would encourage you to share in the chat to connect with others. How are you helping emerging talent build skills, relationships, and confidence? No thesis statements, please, in the chat. But if there's a few sentences that come to mind, if there's a word that comes to mind, I would empower you right now to share it in the chat, just to get us thinking. And then in a minute or so, I will share with you some of the common responses that I hear when I deliver this program. I'm going to give you about 40 seconds or so to share in the chat how you're helping emerging talent build skills, relationships, and confidence. Oh, good. They're coming. And I was going to say, don't be shy. You mentioned that you are doing some awesome things. So I want you to hold space and share with our community. What are some of the things that we're seeing in the chat, Jennifer?
Yeah, so I see here organized opportunities to dialogue, mentoring, intern program, giving interns real world projects, networking opportunities with senior leaders, end of internship presentations, building resilience. I'd love to learn more about that. Showing them a world of careers they might not know about, offering job shadowing and day in the life examples for those positions, and then ensuring that students are made aware of all possible options: workforce, 2-year, 4-year, military, and across all industries. I can't read as fast as they're coming in. And they are great options. Knowledge of options is power. I agree with that, Pat. Knowledge of options is power. Mentoring coupled with learning opportunities. Catherine said the students in their department are assigned to different animal care teams each semester, and they work out the schedule among themselves, how they will cover that care. They're also required to have an internship.
So wonderful. And were you looking at my next slide, everybody? I love the contributions. What are some of the things that I tend to hear when I ask this question across the country for programs? Hybrid learning, really leaning into this. Cohort-based learning, where we're getting young people to learn from each other. Industry partnerships, again, that are really focused on either high growth areas or industries and sectors where there is not much racial representation. I will not say on this chat what some of those are, so no one attacks me in a news article, but there are some industries where representation on a gender and racial lens, as two examples, are quite small, in single digits. And so they're being innovative there. Certifications and industry designations like a CFA, for example, like a SHRM, Society of Human Resource Management. Paid internships and freelance opportunities. Please notice here, I put paid. Why? Because if we're talking about equity and we're talking about opportunities from a racial, ethnic, or gender line, as an example, we want to make sure that we are considering economic opportunity. And then finally, culturally competent train the trainer programs. And so when we're talking about whether it's mentor programs or we're talking about industry coaches, we want to make sure that they're bringing their brilliance and the skills that they've built over decades of work and combining that with an understanding of culture and student experience. So hopefully this plus your amazing list gets you thinking about all the different ways that you can be a part of career development through an inclusive lens. So my final slide or so before we get to go into Q&A, we talked about a lot, and hopefully there have been some slides that have stuck with you or some places you want to go back and do some research or consider opportunities into the new year. So what are some strategies to build the pipeline? What are some things that I want you to consider post-session? Number one, I want you to know the data and build your programs, policies, and practices around it. So if you were here and you were kind of representing industries and sectors at large and you're in a career coaching capacity, I just want you to start to understand what are the topics that are taking place as it relates to workforce development, talent development and retention, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and just future of work conversations more broadly. I want you to understand some of the dynamics that might impact certain industries or sectors, and understanding there's not a shortage of data online that we can use to help us make and launch informed and conscious initiatives for our emerging talent. Point two, I want us to reimagine opportunity by getting out with the old and in with the new. And I realized from my work with partners that this can be a resistance point, because so often we say, well, we've been doing it this way for so long, or I found success here, a leader might say, so I want to continue this. But if there was ever a time for us to reimagine and reconsider, it would be now. And so I want us to lean into that as an opportunity, because I believe that there's something powerful for us to learn through that experience. Point three, get proximate to build new talent pipelines representative of society at large. Some of you might have heard of Brian Stevenson, who is the founder of the Equal Justice Initiative in Alabama. And I can remember a talk he did during my Wall Street days where he said, proximity makes all the difference in driving impact. And so if we're talking about empowering and engaging emerging talent, how close are we getting to emerging talent? How are we allowing them the space to share experiences, to provide feedback? If we drill in on emerging talent to ethnic minorities or people, students of color, as an example, or graduates of color, how are we making sure we're hearing their unique experiences and being confident to say, we might have experiences that transcend a generation or transcend a professional title, but that there are unique experiences that subset groups may have. If we're not willing to do that, we're missing an opportunity to be conscious. And so these are just three things that I would give you to consider as we think about what's next. So my final piece before we open up on why I think, and I'll just hone in on the concept of data is so important, is what I have found in the work that we've done is that data can serve as a tool in racial and gender equity. One of the organizations we've been so fortunate to partner with is Girls Who Code. Many of you are aware of Girls Who Code, and if you're not, they're really seeking to build and empower the next generation of women technologists, specifically computer science technologists. And we've had a chance to partner with them. And one of the powerful things that they offer in the topic of confidence building is their program called College Loops. What is College Loops? Well, they determined that one of the barriers and roadblocks to building the next generation of women in computer science happens in college, where a young woman might declare a major in computer science, or her likelihood to graduate with that major and to go into gainful employment is challenged during those college years. And so College Loops is an opportunity to build community for women who are interested in computer science and to help them to foster that community from their first year through graduation. It's the identity conversation that we talked about, the occupational identity conversation. Well, we did some work with them, and one of their goals was, well, we have these partnerships across the country. We want to make sure that we're thinking holistically about colleges and universities across the country and how we can bring more young women of color into the Loops program and to graduate with degrees, because we know that there are disparities on a racial lens. And so they came to us and said, we want you to help us do a landscape analysis of the current landscape of computer science at colleges and universities across the country, and help us really create a strategy to partner with historically Black colleges, Hispanic serving institutions, and tribal colleges. I will tell you all, the team went in with our own perceptions on what the landscape across the country was in terms of those who were selecting majors of computer science and those who were graduating. Let me just say, single digit graduation rates across these universities. And we would not have been able to launch our initiative and our campaign for 2022 if we had not used data as our tool. And we weren't able to use the data, to take the data that we had, to have conversations with colleges and universities, to be able to kind of understand the root of the barrier and how our launch was going to seek to really mitigate those challenges through time. So that's one example of how powerful data can be when we're talking about launching things that are seeking to address social issues. But in the movement towards equity, data oftentimes, we have it out there. Are we using it as a lever? Questions out. And so I want to just, I wanted to give you a practical example from my pointed list of a very impactful way I believe that we can take data and drive progress. Folks, we're at the end, and I think we've got a little bit of time for Q&A, but so I'm within time. I want you to stay connected. I want you to stay connected. We are passionate at College Code, and we are thankful to have partners like Tallo in reimagining work and career. And so I want to encourage you, if we're not connected on LinkedIn, let's get connected on LinkedIn. We put a talent toolkit together. I believe that the Tallo team will send it out, but if you're also interested in getting some of our other resources, you can text College Code Speaks to 33777 to be in the know of some of the information and products we're going to be launching next year. And now I think it's time for questions. I'm seeing some questions in the box, so I want to maximize time.
Yeah, so Chelsea, we have a lot of questions. I think let's do our best to get to them in the next 10 minutes. But wow, thank you. This was, I think, thought-provoking for everyone on the call. And as we wanted to start, right, take tips and tricks with you at the end of this session. So I'm going to try to bucket these questions because I'm seeing some trends here. So the first, at the very beginning of the presentation, so I'm going to take us back 45 minutes. You mentioned Generation Alpha and what that might look like. You said it's the first generation where white is not the majority. So can you describe what that majority might look like?
This is the first generation where white is not the majority, in the sense of what their experiences might be? Is that
what that next generation that's coming, after Gen Z, what do we have coming next?
Here's what I would say. I think a lot of it is currently being shaped, which is what I think a lot of it is currently being shaped about where we are. We do have to understand this generation of, let's say, middle schoolers at this point and high schoolers at this point have gone through a pandemic. Social justice and social unrest has been a core part of their experience. I think I would be remiss to say that, a lot of this is regional conversations as well. And so I think there are certain parts of the country where the experience in that particular region is impacting how students are seeing themselves and certainly thinking about their next steps. I think a lot of it is too soon to say. I do think this focus on social impact, I think that this focus on community, much because they have been, forced to really be able to lean into that, will be things to watch. I think the technology conversation, where for Gen Z, it has been such a pointed foundational part of their experience. I'm very interested to figure out for Alpha generation, if it's the same dependence or if there becomes a situation where they are less engaged and interested in that just because of all that has transpired. I think the mental health and wellness, Jennifer, conversation is a big one for this generation because they are leading with this and they're talking about it. And so those are just some of the things that I'm thinking about, but I think it's something for all of us to watch with ease.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you. I think the mental health is going to be at the forefront of hiring conversations without a doubt, or enrollment conversations. What's a college doing? How are you supporting that for students? So, and how is that a part of, I think we sometimes miss, how is mental health a part of hiring packages, just like salary, just like benefits? What does that look like? I think we should all be thinking in that direction, not just for Gen Alpha, but Gen Z too. We've had a couple questions come in about intersectionality. How would you recommend, Chelsea, introducing that concept to either a college or to an employer?
Yeah. We have to get comfortable with the language. And I know this can be the part that can be anxiety ridden in most people because there is so much evolving language as it relates to identity. I think the big thing is, and I said this from the beginning, we might be able to point to some observations, general preferences, experiences when it comes to groups of people, but we never want to make blank statements about individuals or groups. And I think the concept of intersectionality, that's what it's charging us to do. I'm Black, but I'm also a woman. And there are other forms of my identity. I'm just sharing those two with you now. And so it is important for me to be able to, for me, it may not be for everyone, but for Chelsea to be able to connect with the parts of my racial identity and the parts of my gender. And so if I'm an employer, I can take you back to one example that I hope is powerful. I'll be quick. I remember one particular financial services firm I worked with. They were doing diversity work decades ago. And I remember the first time they came to campus, they said, to Spelman, they said, we are focused on diversity, but we are only focused on women. We're not focused on any other form of diversity, only women. And someone asked a question in the audience, well, what about my race and my ethnicity? Now, this particular woman wasn't a Black woman. She was a Latina who came to Spelman, and she asked the question. And they were like, well, we're going to start with women and we'll talk about race and ethnicity later. Well, that's not possible. That's hard. If you are a woman of color, both of them are parts of your experience and your identity. You can't choose one over the other. And so I think for employers who are being conscious, campuses who are being conscious, it's being able to balance these and not consider people through only one lens and one identity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And in that same vein, we got a similar question of how can a company support employees without showing favoritism, especially when considering intersectionality and how complex it is, because equal might not always be fair. You hear, those conversations a lot. So any specifics, maybe one takeaway that someone can take with them after this?
Yeah, great question. A big one that comes up. Because to be honest, I heard some people say, we've focused a lot on race. We've focused a lot on Black people. It's time for us to think about other things. I've heard it all. And I get it. But I also, this is why I go back to data. If you're an employer, your data, in many ways, quantitative and qualitative, should be king. Your decision should be, especially if you've made an outright statement. Example, if you're saying we want to have more, we want to work on our underrepresented minority population. If we're saying that, we got to go back to our data and assess where are we? Where do we aspire to be or to go? And then our resources really should align with the vision and the reality of our data. And so that's how I think about this. I do think we need to also balance the understanding of everyone has an identity and, again, a lived experience, and we don't want to allow certain people to think that their identity and experience is more important than others. And if people are thinking that, we should be cautious with the language, but we do need to understand people are having different experiences in the workplace, and we need to be empowering and educating our people to understand that and make sure that what we're seeking to launch strategy or programs and practices are aligning with the reality of where we are.
Yeah. I love how it always goes back to the data. And I think you mentioned it at the beginning, Chelsea, and you and I have talked about it. If a student or a future employee doesn't see themselves, how are they going to identify and either go to your school or work for you one day? And so it leads us to a question of how should or how can a college or company advertise their commitment to intersectionality, diversity, equity, inclusion? Should they spell it out explicitly? Should it be done passively? What should that look like?
It really should be a fabric of your organization. And when I say this, The performative thing to do is to have a website where you list it all. No, I think that's important because I think, again, this next generation, they're searching online. We hear it all the time. We see it from, they are Googling everything, or Yahoo, whatever platform you use, right? And so I do think it needs to live online in a central place, but you cannot stop there. We also need to make sure, if we have a university recruiting and relations team, we need to make sure that they are empowered and they have the language. We need to make sure hiring managers or anybody who's a part of intern teams, certainly intern managers, that they have the language and they have the understanding. And so I think that requires some education, that requires potentially maybe even some talking points for people who are saying, I don't feel as comfortable right now. Well, here's a tool to help you get there. Those are some things that I think are really important. I think partnerships is another powerful place. The more that we can partner with organizations from these particular communities, Tallo, as a plug, but partnerships are critical for us to be able to reach new markets, new populations of people in an authentic way. And in those partnerships, we need to be asking the questions. Nothing worse than forming a partnership where we walk out at the end of the year and we don't receive some additional data or insights that helps us in the year to come or in our next steps. So that becomes really important.
Yeah, I agree. How important is a give and take in a partnership, right? I need to support you, you support me, and then we're both collectively growing together. So I know, Chelsea, we're going to send out your incredible resource guide you put together. So everybody will have that. But also the question came in of how can we go to our leadership and ask them to consider these concepts? So I think, that resource guide we're going to send out is a great starting point, but any other tips for how to have these conversations with leadership?
Yeah, listen, again, this is what I'm going to continue going to the data. 20 to 30, by 2030, 30% of the workforce will be Gen Z. And this is just one example. Well, our data is also telling us that racial ethnic groups are starting to have a significant growing composition across the country. Those are two data points right there. It's not Chelsea's opinion. This is data, right? And so I think the more that we can have that data, but then we can take a step back. And I think one thing I'm very passionate about and the team is passionate about is quantitative data is only one measure. Qualitative data, what we are hearing, what's being written, and when we're having informal conversations, when we're doing focus groups and interviews, if we're formalizing it, all of that is also powerful intel, because that's the storytelling piece that becomes really important when we're seeking to make a case for what it is that we're aspiring to launch or we're aspiring to create at our organization. So those are just some things that I would consider. And then my final piece, this just hit me. I remember in my Wall Street days when I was trying to form our early career strategy across the country, it became important for me to have other allies, I call them allies, in leadership roles at the organization. And so there were some people who I knew were just super passionate about the next generation too. I can remember their names right now. And I remember we had a lunch and I just proactively reached out to those two people. They were very senior, like literally reporting into the CEO. And I was just like, you and I share the same interest. We know that this vision is important. How can you help? What do you think I'm missing? And just having those other people who have the ear of that top leadership role, if you can, tremendously helpful in pushing forth. So that's my final piece.
Yeah, no, that's a great tip because the second question is really granular, like the second piece of this. And so I'd say probably Chelsea can give you some really specific feedback for your own company or college if you reach out to her. But it was kind of about that of how do companies and colleges set a budget for this? Do you have to have a dedicated person that you hire? So I know we're right at 1:00 Eastern, so I don't want to keep you too long, but in that same vein, I think everyone's really hungry and thirsty for that knowledge. Okay, how do we do it next?
Yeah, reach out because some of this is very specific. I would not give the same information to a corporation than a university. I think at a university, in many ways, you might think about other departments and how you can kind of partner together because it's a similar. Listen, if career development is only sitting in the career office of a college or university, we're missing it. There should be a connection also with professors. There should be a connection with student activities. There could be a connection with study abroad, depending on what you're doing. And so the bridging together is important. For corporations, sometimes there is an intern-wide program if it's a large enough organization. Sometimes It's piloted with one particular group, marketing or supply chain, and based off of success there, it expands. A lot of different approaches, but contact me and I'm happy to find some time to talk it over with you.
Last question, and then I promise to let you go. It's two questions, same point. They said reimagining opportunity, rebuilding your talent pipeline. It's a challenge. They're ready to bring in a more diverse population, but they aren't seeing them come. What can companies do to be more appealing to minorities?
Ooh, this could be its own workshop, Jennifer. Maybe this is a part two. Maybe this is a part two, Jennifer.
Okay, I'll take it. I love it.
Well, because the employer brand, this is what's keeping our team on the early talent side really busy these days. Because I think a lot of organizations, twofold. You have the organizations that have the great name, but they're realizing, oh my gosh, decades ago, we were the hot company, and not so much anymore, just because generations are changing and they're interested in new industries or sectors. I'm sure you all have heard that and seen that where you are. That's one camp. And so I think that it's just really important, first of all, get to know the students. Don't make assumptions about students of color, about women. Get to know them, understand that there are different experiences. There's also a regional conversation that we haven't scratched the surface on as well. Rural, urban, like so important for us to discuss. And then I think the second piece is, and this is the tip, I normally give this in my strategy sessions, but you'll get it today. What's in it for me? There's a lot of great companies. There's a lot of great internship programs. There are. Some of them pay really well. Some of them it's not paid, but they've got other things that really bring people in. Your organization needs to determine what is our sweet sauce. What is it that we do that a student would say, oh, that's where I'm going? Because let me tell you, when a student goes to your organization and they have a great time, that's your marketing. They're going to go tell all their friends. I know Tallo probably experiences that on the platform, and that's your marketing that's happening. And guess what? You're not having to do much but provide them an awesome experience and a place of belonging. So I think that those are some things that I would just start to think about. What is your secret sauce? What's in it for me? And being able to answer those questions and then communicate it are powerful ways to build your brand.
I love it. This has been incredible, Chelsea. Thank you so much. I'm sorry that we kept you 3 minutes over. I think everybody has learned something and has something really tangible that they can take with them. So I know Chelsea shared her contact information. We're going to put hers and mine up there. If we can answer any questions, we are certainly happy to help. Chelsea, thank you again.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, and Abby, for your partnership into Tallo. Strongly believe in your platform, and I know that it is game-changing for this next generation and all of the employers that want to authentically tap into them. And to everyone who showed up, thank you. Please stay in touch. If there's anything that we can do, we're here for you. And holiday wishes. We're in December now, so I can say that. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Bye.